Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your board game doctor today. Now, I normally space out my videos in order to give myself some time to play games and to gather my thoughts, etc., and just because I'm so busy. But I've had the opportunity to play this game on Tabletop Simulator, and I couldn't wait to talk about it, and so that's a hint of how much I enjoyed it. So, this is Natera, New Beginning. This is a 2024 game currently on Kickstarter. And as you can hear, the stats for the game, highly rated so far from the people who have played it. I don't know how many, so 80 people have rated it, 54 have left comments, most of them very positive. I'll get into a little bit of a peer review later. But so this is published by Horizon Games, designed by Eric Fuguer and Hugo Tremblay-Ledoux. And now I want to show you what the game looks like. So this is the game on Tabletop Simulator. Anyone can go and play it, I think, during the Kickstarter event, which is ongoing. And you can play the intro version, which includes these 4 factions. I believe there are at least four more that you can play with. So as a quick overview in this game, the theme is things happened and animals are now sentient and they rule the world, very similar to a situation like Zootopia. So you can think of this as Zootopia, the board game. And this game utilizes worker placement and hand card management and resource management as well to have the most points at the end of the game. It's played over 4 rounds. And now to talk about some things that are pretty unique that I enjoy about this game. First is the deck of cards. As you might know, I really enjoy games with a lot of decks of cards. And so I haven't gone through all the cards, but you have a basic deck that has about 70 cards in it and about 80 cards and 60 cards or so. I don't know. It's a good range of cards that you have. You have basic cards that give you more resource production type of effects to give you extra actions during the game, as well as less points, but for more ramping up to be able to play these advanced cards, which give you more points and more, not just straight up points, but more ways to score points and other benefits as well. You either have 2 or 3 workers, depending on your faction, that you can place out onto the worker placement board. And the second thing that I want to mention that is somewhat unique to this game is the revealing of different worker placement spots during the game. It's a dynamic system where as you play workers onto a certain quadrant of the board, you advance along that track. You can advance through card effects and etc. But as soon as you reach a certain tier on a track, you can flip over 2 more variable worker placement spots that vary from game to game. And the same thing goes when you reach tier 3. So there are variable ways to play this game. You explore the worker placement spots that you have available. And the other good thing about the worker placement too is not just limited to the 3, but there are many card effects that I've found that let you take extra actions with your workers. But you can also take actions to spend your resources, which there are 6 of, 6 different types of, to place cards into your tableau, which have immediate effects, ongoing effects for production from round to round, as well as extra actions that you can take on your turn if you meet the requirements. I also failed to mention that you can purchase these cards where there are certain helpers or animals that can help you with extra actions. If you spend the right resource, you can take that action as well, in addition to activating when it's purchased. The last thing that I want to mention is this variable or tech tree or science track, basically. It's a tech tree that you can advance on, where you start at the bottom, which usually gives you a track to advance on for production, and then you get a lot of one-time benefits, typically, during the advancement along this track, and then at the top you can score points at the end of the game as well. So, and this is double-sided and modular, that you could randomize or potentially even draft as well. So there are other things to this game, like milestones that you can chase. If you reach the top of the tracks, you gain extra points. If you're farther ahead than anyone else on tracks, you gain points at the end of the game. And that is kind of it. The rest of the game falls into the cards and what they allow you to do and what they allow you to pursue. So with that, let's go ahead and I'm going to switch screens over to some games that I think this game reminds me of. Now, the first one that I thought of was Revive, more so because after hearing the theme of the game as well as looking at my own tableau, I had reminiscent thoughts of the way Revive kind of plays. The action is different. Revive is more of a hand or a card action selection type of game. But there kind of is an element of exploration in both games, more so in Revive on a shared map versus the worker placement spots that you're quote-unquote exploring in Natera. But there's also kind of a little puzzle that you solve with your tableau to reactivate effects on your own tableau in Revive to create a sort of engine to gain resources and points with. And that was kind of reminiscent with the tech tree. And now that I'm talking about this too, the tech tree really reminded me of games from Jeffrey CCH that if you are following this channel, you know that I really enjoy his games like Age of Civilization, Age of Galaxy, and his latest Kickstarted game, Epochs. So really like that, but the more I played this game, the more I thought of a lot of the comparisons that the peer review comments really made mention of, which are games that utilize worker placement, not necessarily just deck building in particular, but games that allow for hand management and card play in addition to worker placement. So that's going to include Dune Imperium. You could talk about Terraforming Mars, which I believe is an inspiration for this game, as well as Ark Nova, a lot of those popular games that have large decks of cards, plus some additional major component for driving the board game. However, out of those popular games, I think this one, Lost Ruins of Arnak, is the closest reminiscent game to what I feel Natera is trying to portray or in how it plays. Because in both games, along the way, the beginning of the game is very tight, right? You don't have as much progression, where you feel limited with the limited amount of workers that you have and the cards that you can play and the resources that you acquire and can use. But as you play cards out and explore the board more and advance along those tracks, then the flow of resources will increase. The more cards you acquire and place down, usually the more cards you can acquire later on and have more options to play with. And essentially, both games occur in a set number of rounds where each round you take turns until you pass and can't take any turns anymore or don't want to. And so there's a lot of flexibility to what your turns and rounds look like, the order of operations in which you try to execute the options, whether to place a worker on the board or whether to place a card onto your tableau, how you convert some resources to others in order to achieve what you want to. Both games allow for a lot of flexibility and a lot of abilities to feel clever in the way that you structure your turns together to create some sort of combos. And there is an element of combo cascading in Natera as well that you might find in other games like Lost Ruins of Arnak and like Ark Nova, for example. But I really felt like the turn structure, the sense of growth and exploration for different worker placement spots and different options that you have to take when it comes to placing workers out, to converting resources and advancing along tracks as well, it felt very similar to Lost Ruins of Arnak for me. And then if I had to compare any Uwe Rosenberg game, as you know, I love Rosenberg games and can try to make comparisons at any time, I'm going to compare this to Hallertau, because Natera and Hallertau really rely on the cards that you draw and the combos that you can create with them. Sure, with Agricola, you have a huge deck of cards, and other Rosenberg games as well, that you can draft from or play to create a lot of different card combos in the long run throughout the game. But I feel like Hallertau does something a little bit different compared to Rosenberg. It gives you a lot of card flow, or it attempts to give you a lot of card flow, also mixed with worker placement rather. So it's very similar mechanically compared to Natera, but the way that you draw those cards and the combos that you can potentially create with them allow for a sense of like that rush of excitement when you do finally put two pieces together and can chain a few cards and worker placement actions together in a smart way, helping you feel like you've accomplished something pretty cool and solved a little mini puzzle each turn in how you chain your cards and actions together. I get that feeling from Hallertau, where there's a lot of emphasis placed on card draw and chasing after those objectives that you see on your cards. And in both games, in Natera and Hallertau, the cards themselves are quite unique. Natera here, and so there are lots of cards, especially the more advanced cards, that have different ways to score points. For example, this Beloved Leader card, if you collect a lot of those helper cards, you get more points by collecting them and spending. And so it helps you focus on a certain goal, very similar to the points cards in Hallertau. You've got icon set collection as well. I failed to mention that earlier, which is very similar to Terraforming Mars and Ark Nova, that help you reach certain milestones, as I've mentioned before. And some of these have one-time effects too that are very interesting and unique, and sometimes very they work in an edge case that might really benefit you, or you might just play them for the points. And so I love the flexibility, and I really enjoy some of the thematic influence for some of these cards too. You can, like this Hightail card, for example, move your tribe leader to any location occupied by another tribe leader. That's one thing that I failed to mention as well with the worker placement, is that each faction has a tribe leader, and so if you place a tribe leader on an open spot, no other token can go there. Whereas if you play a normal worker, another opponent can place their normal worker on that spot too to gain the action spot. But it's like it's the opposite of the Grande worker in Viticulture, where this blocks off everyone else versus the other way around. So the cards, I haven't looked through all the cards, but I assume that especially these advanced cards have a lot of flavor to them, depending on the artwork and the thing that they're trying to depict, and that is something that I really enjoy in games. So for the peer review, a lot of people mention this as well. They really enjoy the comparisons that are made to popular games such as Terraforming Mars and the like. There were a few comments about how this game didn't really come together for them. Like, at first, and usually I can see the point of view of a lot of people's more critical comments on board games. A lot of these comments that are made on Board Game Geek at this moment talk about how this game just felt like boring, or the complexity wasn't there. It was too straightforward. And I just wonder if they didn't have a chance to really explore the game all the way through, revealing more of these advanced exploration cards to add a lot of unique abilities and unique things to chase during the game, because there are, I feel, multiple paths to getting victory points in this game. You can really chase these milestone objectives and race for them. You can play a lot of cards out, for example, and synergize them for points. You can build these settlements out as well, which is a small mechanism where if you place out a little house on an action spot, and if anyone, including you, goes there, then you reap that benefit. And so you can kind of build a small engine that way as well, and you gain victory points in that regard. Your own tech tree, how does that mesh with your faction? There are a lot of different factors and a lot of different ways for you to gain points and scale up, and that I think there's a lot of variability to this game, and a lot of pathways to gaining points and to feeling clever. And so I join a lot of the positive comments that are seen on Board Game Geek, where I think this game has a lot of potential. This is one of the few games that I've played in recent memory where I learned how to play it and played a round of it, and really wanted to get back into it the next evening tonight, where I was just thinking about all the positive things that this game has to offer. The rule set isn't very light. The weight of this game is about 3 out of 5, and I think that hits very straight home for me because it's not terribly difficult to teach or to learn, and especially being familiar with games like Terraforming Mars and Lost Ruins of Arnak, etc. It made picking up this game a lot easier. And the nuances of this game may not be as wholly unique to compared to other games that are doing more innovative things, but I think everything that comes together here with cozy, familiar mechanisms such as hand management and resource management, worker placement, it all comes together very naturally, and I really enjoyed it and see this game having a lot of legs to being very replayable and very popular as well. So I hope that this game gets a lot of recognition and a lot of support, because I think this is one of those games that has a lot of potential for being very popular, as that could hinder it as well, because it's so reminiscent of games that are popular, and so there's hard comparisons to make. When you make a game like this, you have to compare it to some of the tried and true favorites, and so I think, though, this game feels unique enough and is a great enough game that it can stand on its own. So those are my first impressions of Natera New Beginning. Hopefully it does well on Kickstarter, and go ahead and check it out if you are interested. So thank you for consulting with me today, and hope that you schedule an appointment with your board gaming doctor real soon. Take care.